This is a video that I've been wanting to make for quite a while now. So, a major catalyst for my growth this year stemmed from the breakup between my ex and I. And to help kind of paint the picture of where I'm coming from and why this was so heavy, we had been together for 7 years. We were engaged and we had a wedding on the books. And on paper, we had it all. And many people were inspired by our love for each other. And it truly felt like I found the one. I would often fantasize about our lives together and about everything, house, kids, growing old, the whole nine. But however, as things progressed and we started to get more serious, I did soon find myself back on the market. 7 years doesn't happen by accident either. In my book, there were far more good than bad moments. But there also were things that admittedly we had a hard time just resolving, which eventually just led to us parting ways. Now, I recognize that I'm sharing this on the internet in a very public manner, so I don't intend for this video to become a smear campaign against my ex. I'll be very respectful of her privacy, since this is a delicate topic, but I will be focusing more so on my experience and how I overcame it, especially since I know I'm not the first and won't be the last. So I absolutely went through some pretty intense symptoms of grief. In the beginning, there was definitely a lot of, denial and trying to fight like hell to make things right. I would do things like, well, almost, and it's hard to think back on, but would kind of like sort of beg and plead and try to do anything to make it right. But we kind of hit a point of no return. And, it was hard to accept. I had a very hard time in those early days trying to sleep. Many of the first few weeks, I kind of just spent most of the night just lying in bed, ruminating, until eventually I tired out and dozed off. But unfortunately, my dreams weren't safe either. And those would go a few different ways. For my dreams, I'd either have a dream of us having a pretty intense argument and almost like solidifying where things are at. Or I'd have a dream that I found something disturbing, that would, just make it all the more painful. Or worst of all, and in a weird sort of way, sometimes I'd have dreams of us reconciling and working it out, getting back together. And that was the hardest one because I'd wake up to the reality that that just wasn't the case. So it was kind of like a bit of, I guess, false hope in a sense. And when I was awake, one of the most concerning things for myself and others who were with me at the time was my appetite. It just didn't exist. I would try to eat. I knew I had to eat, but I just couldn't. I would attempt, but would often start to dry heave or just could not get any food down. Um, it would take me several days to eat a quick check sub, and after all was said and done, I wound up losing close to like 15 pounds. And of course, when I wasn't working or failing to eat, I also just couldn't really get into things that I normally enjoyed. Video games, TV shows, movies, hell, even the NFL playoffs were hard to really get excited for. Which, if you know me, I'm a big football fan, so that's a pretty intense signal that I wasn't okay. Now, I don't want this video to become Patchy's pity party. I do promise there's a brighter ending to all of this, although it's definitely not the one that I would have hoped for 6 months ago. This earlier grieving stage went on for several months, and of course, the sad sack of ass had to do something with himself. Since I couldn't get myself to care about much of anything entertainment wise, I did find myself engaging with a lot of breakup content online at first. It just seemed like the algorithm kind of knew what I was going through, which I don't even know how because we didn't really make anything public at the time, but it must have fucking heard arguments. So I was getting a lot of things, like ads for programs to help couples get back together, or even just like breakup advice. And honestly, a lot of it was garbage. And it was a little annoying, a little intrusive, but at the same time, I do feel like I was kind of sifting through different styles, different ideologies, and creators that wound up down the line. It helped me build rather more of a trustworthy roster of creators to follow. Which I have another video idea to kind of talk about the pros and cons of this sort of breakup or self help content that you'll see. But amongst the sea of crap that I was swimming through, I did find some gems, as well as some things that I needed to hear at that particular moment in time. And one of those actually was a quote that I came across, which comes from the FX show Louie. And honestly, it really resonated with me and wound up kind of becoming like the overall theme of my self help and recovery journey. And this quote goes as follows: "Misery is wasted on the miserable." It's a very brilliant and deep quote. And it literally took me several days to think on it, sleep on it, unpack it, and fully understand what it means. And to save you some of that time, I'll go ahead and share what this quote meant to me and how it's become something that's kind of been a sort of mantra to kind of help me out of the darkness. So, my 30th birthday is around the corner, and I like to think, obviously I'm not an old man, but I think I've been around long enough to kind of understand the ebbs and flows of life. Things are either great, life can be great at times. You can be getting a promotion, getting married, having a kid, buying a house. There's a lot of fun, great moments in life that are beautiful. So that's kind of like one, I guess, maybe like temperature or climate that life can present you with. Or life can be fine, can be kind of middle of the road, sort of mundane, where it's like you're just, going to work, coming home, eating a meal, taking a shit, and going to sleep, and then do it all over again. That's kind of actually what life is like for a lot of people in their, I guess, adult years. So it's either good, it's fine, or it's awful. Life can really suck at times, really kick you in the balls. Just it can be relentless, and those rock bottoms are part of the package. There's no exception there. And I'd even bet, even in a good or lucky life, a wealthy life, there probably still people who have those sorts of lives probably still go through those sorts of rock bottoms as well. Whether or not those low points are common or uncommon for people's lives, they are extremely precious fuel sources and sort of like launch pads for personal growth. And to help paint the picture with an analogy, think of misery as a check engine light. Those don't appear for no reason. So if you're seeing one, obviously something's got to get looked at. Now, a miserable person in this quote, or somebody who decides to waste the misery, will simply just ignore it. They'll turn the music up, keep driving, and ultimately that's going to lead to something much worse. Now, a curious person will turn the car off, open the hood, and try to figure out what caused the damage, learn how to fix it, and understand how to prevent it from happening again. Now, if I can be honest with you, I do think, unfortunately, I identified with that first camp for longer than I'd like to admit. There were many moments in my life where I would ignore red flags or these check engine lights to the point where I did eventually find myself in a ditch on the side of the road with smoke coming out of the engine, if we're speaking in terms of this analogy. And it wasn't until recently that I decided to finally become a sort of DIY mental health mechanic and found myself getting a bit more obsessed and just wanted to understand and grow from these challenging moments rather than continue to avoid my issues for this the sake of false comfort. Um, and I don't want to sound like a human fortune cookie, but I will summarize my interpretation of this quote about misery with another quote. Suffering is inevitable, but surrendering is a choice. And this time around, when misery and suffering found their way back into my life, I decided this time around to not surrender to it, which honestly was one of the best moves I ever made. Now, I'll go ahead and share a bit of what I did and what I've been doing presently to not waste this misery that unfortunately came my way at the end of last year. The first one, and probably the most important step, was therapy. Now, I'm sure that sounds predictable, but and honestly, there's a lot I can get into on that topic alone, to the point where it could be its own video. But I'll keep it brief for the purpose of this one. And to summarize, therapy has been great, especially in the beginning. My therapist did a really good job of kind of keeping me in line. I definitely was not in a good headspace when I went into it, and she did a good job of kind of keeping me at bay and making sure I didn't do anything that I would regret. And having that sort of high level perspective, and having a professional to engage with was truly what I needed, especially for somebody who was battling not only a tough breakup, but other things as well, that I may talk about more in other videos. But I had much more going on than just the breakup, unfortunately. So she really did do wonders, my therapist. However, there was one important realization that kind of hit me when I began going to therapy, and it's that they're not always available. Especially when I started, it was early December when I began therapy, and since it was the holiday season, she did take off for the rest of the year and into the new year, which kind of sucked because I was still very much in the fog of war at that time. And I would joke and say that my therapist must be the Avatar because when I needed her most, she vanished. And as goofy as that may be, I do think it also kind of helped realign my expectation for what therapy actually is. And therapy is just not a prescription drug that you take for 10 days and you're better. I see it more as like a gym membership for your mental health. The thing that you keep showing up for, in an effort to keep your mental health in shape. And since this mental health gym apparently isn't always open, I also realized that I had to do a bit more of my own due diligence and treat therapy sessions as more of like a checkup or a realignment. Um, this is when I started to discover the value in reading materials and self help content. And in all honesty, with the help of ChatGPT, I was able to explain what I was going through, and it was able to give me some amazing book recommendations just based on what I told it. Now, I got into the habit of reading these on a Kindle, or rather, the Kindle app on my computer, so I could just highlight, notate, and even like copy and paste a quote that I liked, along with my interpretation that I wrote in the notes, and paste it back in ChatGPT for some kind of back and forth to help like solidify my understanding and see if there are any other perspectives that I could look at it from. And I will admit it takes me a long time to get through these sorts of books, but I do think that sort of approach makes it much more meaningful and much more of a therapeutic exercise for me to go through. Um, Now, as for the self help content that I alluded to earlier, I was able to sift through the crap, like I said before, and get much more intentional with what I was watching and engaging with. I decided to educate myself on various topics like grief, CPTSD, positive disintegration, and many others. And I also kind of found as well that like blending philosophical and psychological content really gave me a really awesome mixture of like, here's what's going on, and here's a new way to perceive it. Now I can go on and on about this as well, where it could also again be another video, but The point is that I did find a handful of creators that really helped me understand grief, trauma, relationships, and just personal growth. And some of those videos could have challenged my ideals at the time. Some brought me comfort, and some just kind of changed how I viewed everything that was going on. One more thing, too, that was a pretty big move on my part. Probably the most challenging or out of character thing that I did was reaching out to my friends and building up my own support system. As a friend group full of guys, we never really talk about our feelings because, that's kind of gay. Um, However, when I found myself um, contemplating doing something irreversible, to put it lightly, it was the thought of them that kind of stopped me and pulled me out of it. Just it kind of proved to me how important they are in my life, and if they had that kind of power to prevent me from doing something so stupid, selfish, and permanent, it must mean that it's time to advance our friendship to more than just scratching our ass and talking about the playoffs. And I will say too, they all more than delivered. Um, I am blessed to have a pretty deep roster of friends who love and care about me in the way that they do. And I learned a lot of lessons from my talks with all of them. Um, One really important one that I will embody for the rest of my life is that there is no such thing as a one man army. Now, naturally, and I don't think this is a me thing, but I was very used to bottling up my emotions and just dealing with it in my own way. And I saw it as like a kind of courtesy. My old sort of mentality on the whole thing is that I didn't want to dump my shit onto other people's shit. I was like, we're all going through things. Why burden them with my problems? They got their own problems, I'm sure. Which, in hindsight, and with the insight I have now, I see that as a pretty immature way to approach it. And they proved that to me. Instead of burdening them, they all lent me a respectful listening ear and all gave me their undivided attention. Now, some friends gave pretty good advice, others mostly just listened and comforted. But honestly, both were very valuable. I realized that I didn't need them to have the perfect answer. Sometimes all I needed was just someone to sit with me in the pain for a while. And looking back again, opening up to my friends, luckily wasn't the burden that I feared it would be. So, where does this leave me now? And where am I currently at 6 months later? So yeah, it is about the 6 month anniversary of when I became a single man, and I can honestly say I think I'm pretty damn unrecognizable. 6 months ago, I was an anxious and grief stricken mess that was in denial of what was going on. Not only that, but I unfortunately did cling on to old habits that I had a hard time trying to unlearn. But after, again, being busted wide open and looking in the hood and, having the help of my friends, therapists, creators, the whole thing. After just taking the time to understand where I was at, I was able to identify my own blind spots, both as a romantic partner as well as just a person in general, and work on them. I didn't want to mistake recognition for resolution, so I kind of took more of a name it so you can tame it approach, which again worked. I was very open to, being, I guess, taking accountability and humility in my own actions and behaviors and trying to undo some lifelong habits. And now I can say, if I were to compare the old me and the new me, I'm much more open than I used to be. I'm not nearly as bothered or sheepish when it comes to talking about my feelings or what's going on, what's bothering me. And it's not like things stopped. I'm actually very much still in the thick of some of the issues that I've been having throughout the year. So definitely not at the end of the road just yet. But however, I'm no longer wearing it alone like a wet blanket. I've developed healthy habits to keep my nervous system in check without getting burnt out. I'm far more intentional with how I spend my free time, and I do keep a favorable mix of, again, staying educated, self help, but also trying to have fun. I realize you can definitely get burnt out on the self help and therapy stuff, so I try not to make it like I'm always living in a constant psychology class, and so I'll do things like go out with the boys or get my ass clapped in Mortal Shell 2. Just live life. And I think another honestly huge change that is so different from where I was even like a year ago, I made a YouTube channel that something I never would have thought I would have done, but and talk about turning misery into something. This channel honestly does mean a lot to me in the sense that it's given me a bit more of a purpose, or I don't know, it's just a fun new hobby that I've got into. And again, to me, the numbers and the views are irrelevant. It's more so about the process of coming up with video ideas, writing out scripts, recording my nasally ass voice, and editing these things that is more therapeutic. It's more of like a happiness of pursuit approach that keeps me here. And again, I think the most surprising outcome from everything that's happened. So 6 months ago, I thought my life was ending. And now today, I'm here making YouTube videos, reading books I never would have read, talking openly with friends and people that I care about, and becoming someone I didn't know I could be. The breakup still hurts, but if misery is wasted on the miserable, I can at least say I didn't waste mine.